Digicom Weekly Growth Marketing Podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Digicom's Growth Marketing Podcast. This week we will be speaking with Greg Ashton. He is the founder of the Grow conferences. These conferences take place in LA and New York. Grow is the fastest growing community of online brands, technology providers, investors, and agencies around the world. Greg, thanks for jumping on this show with us today. I know, I'm sure you've been just running through walls, getting ready to set up for Grow LA this fall, 2023. We're excited to be participating again with you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks so much for having me on, and we cannot wait for Digicom to be part of Grow LA on October 17th.
Amazing. So, wanted to chat through a little bit about you and a little bit about your career and, how you've been able to build such an incredible event, with the Grow conferences. So, what got you into marketing events?
Yeah, thank you. So I made a completely spur of the moment move to New York back in 2012 from the UK, as you can probably tell. I was born in the UK. My friend had a pretty random job for me, actually, at a conference company. I'd never been to a conference before. I didn't know anything about conferences whatsoever. Before I knew it, I was this 20-something-year-old kid planning oil and gas conferences in Houston. I was running US government conferences for the Department of Defense in Washington, DC. I still have no idea how or why they trusted me to do those shows. But essentially, over a number of years, I just learned the ins and outs of how to plan really huge conferences. Then back in 2014, I ran an event called Mobile Shopping or Mobile Shopping. At that time, about 2014, people were really starting to buy more stuff on their phones. And over the next 2 years, I just learned absolutely everything there was to know about how people shopped on their smartphones. I just became an e-com expert by talking to literally thousands of retail brands, hundreds of tech providers in those years. They gave me an incredibly holistic view of the entire e-com space. And I basically used that expertise to go on to lead the eTail West and the eTail UK conferences. You might be familiar with eTail West. It's the big conference every spring in Palm Springs.
Yeah. That's incredible. And, I know you're constantly communicating and speaking with hundreds and if not thousands of people. And as you've been building your career, can you just kind of call out a couple career highlights, maybe some examples, of like good times, some times that were challenges where you were just learning things as you were going?
Definitely. Yeah, I think there's been a lot of good times, definitely. Some really difficult times, dark times too. I think really growing eTail West into this mammoth 4-day multi-million-dollar conference was a huge highlight. Over 3 years that I was working with eTail, I did genuinely build just an amazing network of retail founders and marketers and tech providers. And most of those contacts went on to become really good friends. I've been to their weddings. I've seen them advance from managers to VPs to startup founders. And we all just kind of rode that wave of e-commerce in the early days. And I'm really grateful for that. I also really enjoyed leading eTail UK as well. I don't know if you've been to that one or heard of that one, but it's essentially the UK version of eTail West. I was this, again, 20-something kid. I was living in New York. Running eTail UK helped me go home a lot more, actually. And in those years, I really kind of saw the juxtaposition, the differences between European and the US retail world, and learned so much about how business operates on both sides of the world. And it was, pretty amazing experience.
Yeah, that's interesting thing, to say, because like of course we do business internationally with clients, Europe, Oceania, the US, different parts of North America as well, and it's just like how businesses operate because of culture, politics, and how just finances are looked at. It's pretty interesting when you think about it. How all of it kind of comes together. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, just off the top of my head, in Europe, the sales are just, I, in a way, more subtle. I think the US is kind of a little bit more aggressive and the way that sales are made, not especially even online. That was just one kind of small difference I noticed. In the UK, people, it's almost impolite to ask for money or ask for a sale, whereas in the US, it's just like, come on, let's get this sale made.
Yeah, I think an example like I would love to just also throw in here is like, a couple business deals in France. We didn't talk about business. We drank some wine and it was like, oh, okay. Like here's the signed contract the next day. Versus in like the in the US, like exactly like you're saying, it's hey, here are our next steps, here's what we're gonna do. There's a lot more of this personal element of, hey, do I want to work with this partner for who the partner is, versus let's just, figure out how to just make money or whatever that kind of looks like.
Yeah,
Um
100%.
Amazing. So, Greg, let's chat a little bit about Grow. Your background and what you've done to build Grow into what it is. Of course, you've learned a lot from Etail and kind of like jumping ship and taking big swings. But tell us a little bit more about Grow and how you got started.
Yeah, I would love to talk about Grow. I think making that move to leave Etail and start Grow in 2018 massively took me out of my comfort zone. At the time, I was living in New York. I had a great social life. I had an amazing social network. I was enjoying my job at Etail, but I didn't love my job. I was running kind of traditional conferences in big hotels. You know what those conferences feel like. They're kind of stuffy, they're very formal. And I just thought at the time, surely there has to be a way to make conferences more fun while still kind of maintaining all those content fundamentals. At that time as well, I was really lucky because in 2018 there was this kind of groundswell of really disruptive, really digitally native brands that were doing really interesting things and just completely breaking all the molds. And it just seemed that big conferences, kind of traditional events, were just not particularly relevant for that audience. So I left Detail. I created a Slack group of 15 founders and CMO friends from super high growth, real trend setting, digitally native companies. There was companies in there like Birchbox, Dagne Dover, Keeps, and Parachute and Rothy's in the very early days. And I basically just started to organize little happy hours down in Lower East Side, which is where I lived in New York. Word just spread pretty quickly about what we were doing. The Slack group was started with 15. It went to 2,000 people really, really quickly. And we realized that we had to just bring this whole group together in person because there was just no other conference out there that was bringing this group together. So back in 2019, we hired this really cool space in Queens. It was a converted factory called the Knockdown Center. We had about 715 people show up for that first event, and the rest is history. We're using kind of reinvented commercial spaces to create 3 shows a year now, 1,000 people at each one, and we've essentially grown our newsletter and Slack channels and events to be in the tens of thousands of people.
Yeah, and I think just again being at Grow and like sponsoring, it's how different it feels versus other conferences. So I've of course I've been to a bunch of different conferences, and it's very startup, it's fun, there's energy, you're speaking to a lot of different brands, you're speaking to founders, like investors, we're speaking to even different potential technology partners that make sense for us as digicom. And um, the way everything is set up, like I think the Grow in LA, it had like this high school theme to it, the one that was in spring, and it was fun. You had like folks wearing like the leather jackets, and it was them running around and like kind of yelling at people saying, hey, you can't be
Yeah,
smoking cigarettes, but they were candy, or it
yeah,
was
those
very
master,
fun.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It didn't feel like a typical conference, and I think in terms of like the branding, you're crushing
That's
it.
all on purpose, definitely. And our team is so good at the branding for sure.
So let's switch gears a little bit. You've introduced Grow. We've spoken a little bit about it. How has it helped brands? And there's a million and one different ways, but like, what are like the top two, three things that you would say to a brand to attend Grow? And then after that, would love to talk a little bit about for sponsors as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think one of the best things in retrospect that we've done at Grow is be very strict on event entry. We really do want to ensure that the vast majority of attendees at Grow are retail brands so that those brands can actually meet like-minded people and share ideas and share approaches that are working and not working, and also just not feel like every single conversation is a sales conversation either. That was really important for me personally, because at a lot of conferences that I've been to over the years, that kind of ratio was just off. At Grow, we definitely aim for a 3-to-1 ratio of brands to non-brands. And funnily enough, we what that means in practice is actually rejecting hundreds of applications, which sounds like a weird thing to do, but it's working for us. Those rejections actually have improved just the overall quality and seniority of the audience. And Nick Sharma, you're probably familiar with him, at our last show, he said getting into Grow is like getting into Harvard. And we're definitely very proud of that. And certainly in terms of content and in terms of learnings, we're definitely Harvard level as well. I mean, at the next show on October 17th, we're going to cover absolutely everything that the brands need to know: paid ads, organic and offline channels, influencer marketing, funding, AI. The list just goes on, and we do a really good job of just compacting all those topics into one day. We just added this cool little feature on the website actually that lets you kind of filter the topics that you're most interested in learning about. So if you wanted to learn about funding, you can just search for funding on the Grow website and you'll know exactly who is speaking about it at each show. I think on a personal level, I'm really proud that we've created so many genuine friendships and authentic partnerships. We get a lot of emails. Our head of community actually gets emails all the time just to say, thanks for this connection. It led to this, it led to that, led to a new deal, it led to a new friendship. I think overall, we've based the whole business really on making sure that our friends become your friends, if you know what I mean. We've never advertised, or if we have advertised, it's been very small levels of advertising. A lot of pretty much the whole community has just been built on referrals and word of mouth. So we know that we're doing something right.
Yeah, and I think what I particularly loved is a lot of it is focused on education. The entire conference. It's not, hey, let me walk around a couple booths and see who's doing what. It's like you mentioned, like-minded individuals, brands that are looking to scale, brands that have crossed the 5 million revenue mark, that are trying to get to 20 million, 50 million, 100 million. And it's like, here are what all of these other brands are doing. Here are the partners they're working with. Here are strategies you can leverage to unlock getting to that next like inflection point, right? Because that's something that Grow brings to the table that just going to other conferences, it's not quite the same. And it is definitely much more intimate than other conferences. I can personally attest to that. So
Thank you. Yeah, we try.
what about the sponsors? Like, why should I'm also going to jump in here because of course we've sponsored Grow once. We're going back in October, but like, why do sponsors want to be at Grow?
I think the ratio of brands to tech providers is really important to talk about here too. And it's funny to talk about ratios when you founded a company that people know for being a fun event, but sponsor ROI is the thing that we take the most seriously. I think really simply the pitch for our sponsors is that we'll get your clients and your prospective clients in a room. We're going to provide a really authentic, organic way for you to connect with them and just help them learn about what you offer. Essentially, getting people in a room is what we do. Getting the right people in the room is what we're good at. Our audience sweet spot is SMBs in the range of around $10 to $50 million in annual revenue. We're always asking our sponsors, what metric do you actually use to measure event ROI, and how do we hit that for you? Especially in this kind of uncertain economic environment, we take that very seriously, and we're not at all complacent about the ROI that we deliver at these events. I think another interesting thing that we do is just not sell sponsor tickets. I know that other conferences do sell a lot of tickets. I think when you only have kind of 30 to 40 sponsor teams at an event rather than hundreds and hundreds of sponsors, it means that you can really focus all your energy on the partner experience and delivering that ROI for that limited number that you do have. And then finally, I guess, just making it easy for sponsors to show up at the show. We do all the heavy lifting. We send all the invites. We pre-build everything. We just want to make it easy for you to look at your calendar and think, oh, Grow is tomorrow. I'm going to go there. I'm going to meet a lot of prospective clients, and there's not much more for me to do. And all of these things lead to a lot of rebooks for us. About 50% of the sponsors that do book with Grow come back. And that's something, again, that we're really proud of as well.
Yeah. And I think like you make everything very turnkey, right? It's just like for us, when we participated in February, we showed up, all of the signage was up, you were able to direct a multitude of different partners who we were able to talk through case studies and strategies of how we were able to help certain partners grow. And what's interesting is, when we were having these discussions, we had several partners kind of come on board with us who we've already scaled. It hasn't been that much time, but their businesses have grown quite a bit. And yeah, I think you did speak about like a key element, which is like, what is the ROI? And that is something important to understand and track. And we've of course seen a positive ROI, but more than that, it's building good partnerships with you, with some of your team members, and then also meeting just great people that we've stayed connected with. Maybe we're not doing business, but that's okay. You get to be friends, you get to learn from one another and get pointed in new directions to either one, help your own business, or two, just learn, again, multitude of different things that happen because of Grow, right? And it's that type of environment.
Definitely. Yeah, it really is that type of environment where conversations do lead to amazing things. And we've seen that happen for the last 5 years now.
Yeah. So with the October 17th show coming up, what is something you're looking forward to, and how is this event different than other events?
Yeah, I mean, at this point in my career, I've probably run close to 100 large conferences, but I'm genuinely excited about Grow LA Fall. I think Grow events, they're known for being fun. They've always been fun. There's always drinks, there's always happy hours. I think one thing that we've done recently to just go above and beyond that and elevate the experience even more is to introduce the theme for each event. You touched on it earlier. For LA Spring, it was back to school. So we had Ferris Bueller's Ferrari. We had those bad boys hanging out and offering people cigarettes, and a headmaster giving detentions for like random things like being in the hallway when they should have been actually listening in class on the main stage. For LA Fall next month, it's Grow Horror Story. So we've basically building the whole event around Halloween because it's like 10 days from Halloween. So we've got a Dracula at the show. He's being hunted by Van Helsing. We're offering prizes for attendees who have the best Halloween costume. It's going to be a ton of fun. Costumes are definitely optional. just to mention that not everyone is going to be in a costume, but if you want to come in a costume, amazing. But I think, yeah, I mean, life can be really serious. I think it's important to just let out your inner child a little bit, and you can definitely do that at Grow.
Amazing. What's advice you can give, brands to help them grow? You've thrown, again, a ton of these conferences, right? Like maybe a couple common themes that our listeners can just take home and maybe put into their day to day.
Yeah, I think my advice is pretty simple. Just talk to retail leaders who have already been in your position and they've already figured out the answer to that question that you have right now. I think when you're really deep in the day to day, it's easy to forget that there are literally thousands of people out there who are working to solve the same problems that you have. And it's important to just talk to them. The Slack group I mentioned earlier, it's a great place to do that. It's a retailer only Slack channel. There's no vendors at all. People are just asking questions in there every single day related to their campaigns and their tech stacks and their careers. And it's just a nice environment to chat, essentially. I think obviously don't underestimate the power of and value of in-person connection, especially in the remote world that we're in. Grow's entire business is founded on that principle of in-person connection. I think that talking in person definitely leads to the most authentic relationships, and it definitely leads to the best business decisions as well and best business outcomes too. And then thirdly, I would just say, kind of brand specific, just focus on what you're good at. I saw a LinkedIn post recently that remarks on how everyone is an AI expert now just because it's a popular trend. But I think the antithesis of that is to just focus on one thing only, one thing that you're really good at, one brand message that you really want to make clear, and just perfect that thing over time, over a number of years. I think most people don't realize that any kind of quote overnight success story probably took years just to get to that point. And my personal mantra has always been just to work in silence and let your results speak for themselves.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I guess my father used to tell me, just put your head down and work, and it'll just the good will come. Highly agree with you there. What's one question you wish I asked you, and how would you answer it?
One question. I was hoping you'd ask me about random hobbies. I guess I have two of those. Gardening and retro video game collecting. Very nerdy, I know. One is very old and one is very nerdy. I guess for gardening, I grew up in a very green place in England. Where I'm from is actually the inspiration that J.R.R. Tolkien had for the Shire in Lord of the Rings. So it's like incredibly green. So as I've got older, I've just appreciated that a lot more. And you can find me really boringly at Home Depot on the weekend buying plants. I'm basically 80 years old at this point. And then video games, I've just always loved video games. I was a really academic kid. Games just kind of helped me switch off from studies. And today, I've kind of translated that into collecting, I would say, pretty rare and sealed games. I've got some pretty cool originals in my collection, like the original GoldenEye on N64 sealed, and original Marios and an original Game Boy. So I like to just have them displayed around the house, and my fiance is totally fine with it. So that's great for me.
That's a big win. That's huge, especially when the fiance is okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
She's not into games, but she doesn't mind.
yeah, I definitely, some of like the art pieces I have up, I am politely asked to maybe switch up my style. So I hear you on that. Amazing. Well, Greg, thank you for jumping on our show today. It's an incredible conversation. Really looking forward to being back at Grow on October 17th. Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah, looking forward to that show. You can find all those details at joingrow.com. You can follow us on Instagram. It's at join.grow. And I would love for you to follow me on LinkedIn as well. It's just me, Greg Ashton. I share retail stories every day.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks so much.